Okay.
Hi, I'm Greg Olson, the SOAN program. I'm enjoyed and I'm joined today by my partner, Joel Steicher, and we have the pleasure of talking with Lauren Tracy, who is one of the co-owners of Flannel Hammer and a SOAN client for the past year. And we're going to kind of talk about the engagement that we've had with Lauren and Joe at the Flannel and Hammer, if you will. To start off with, Lauren, if you would, a little bit about Flannel and Hammer and kind of before COVID, and then what happened when COVID hit to your business.
Sure. So before COVID, we were doing entertainment construction pretty exclusively and growing fairly well doing it. As soon as COVID hit, that obviously shut down all of entertainment. So we were stagnant for a few months, and then we realized we needed to make a new plan, which is how we got connected with you all. And Joel helped us sort of figure out different things that we could do with the skills that we had, because obviously we had skills, building partitions and doing restaurant partitions, which ultimately led us to the project that has worked for us to sort of keep us going. You know, now entertainment's coming back, but it's still taking its time. Is doing custom home like projects for people, furniture building, that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, when we, the theater industry, which was a big part of what you were doing, kind of talk a little bit about how that was like a dramatic shut off, and what your thoughts were around that when it first happened.
Oh, sure. I mean, it went from zero. It went from like being full blown. We were busy constantly to like everything shut down over the course of 5 days, which obviously shut us down pretty quickly because everything that we had, you know, lined up down the pike. I think the week of March 16th, we had 4 different scenic elements we were supposed to be loading in, and all of them got paused. You know, in the span of 2 or 3 days, everybody's like, "Oh, we'll figure it out. We'll only be shut down for a few weeks." And then, by I think it was the middle of May, Joe and I sort of had a conversation of like, "This is going to be a moment. What do we want our plan to be?" But it was a very abrupt shut off.
There was, and then doing that. Now, when we came in, and I think it was fairly obvious that continue doing what was not going to happen, as the demand was just not there. And we had talked with you, and Joel had come out and was talking to you about some of the skills that you had. And can I talk a little bit about the process we went through to kind of identify what you could do and what were some opportunities for you?
Sure. So I guess it sort of started with Joel went through with us to be like, what do you do? Because Joe, my business partner, and I had been sort of tunnel vision in like what we do is entertainment, and there is no entertainment, so there's nothing that we can do without sort of. Joel went through with us and was like, "Here are all the skills you have," and we just realized like, "Oh, we do have other viable skills. We just need a different industry." And then Joel used his resources to pair us with the lightweight manufacturing that was doing the petition screens, and then also helped us connect with Saba at Booker's to. We sort of used her as a test subject to like design and build petitions for outdoor restaurants so patrons would feel more comfortable and give them a little bit of safety protection in between, and sort of that tiptoeing into like these are some things we can do helped us realize like, oh, there are other things we can do. Sort of designing construction services are useful in other industries, and then it took us a little bit to figure out how exactly to reach, you know, a customer clientele of I need a new space for my home.
Now, when you were approached by that, and you were a little innovative in trying to network out there, and can you talk a little bit how you use social media to market introduce yourself to the marketplace?
Sure. Yes, because we did not have a website when we met you all. Now we do. That was the big change, is that Joe and I built a website. And we also started using Instagram more regularly. And then we had one of our carpenters start sort of heading our social media so that we actually had a Facebook presence, which was very useful. And it's funny, that has dropped off a little bit now that we're busier, but it's sort of on the docket for Joe and I to, that's how we can keep that going moving forward, because we did actually pick up a good number of clients through Facebook and Instagram, which neither of us expected to happen.
Great. Joel, can you talk a little bit about the process that I'm going to back up a little bit and bring in Dirk and the Allentown crew there and talk about the process we went through to kind of help Lauren and Joel identify a COVID related safety product and then kind of helping material source for them. Joel, you're on mute.
The background is Lightweight Manufacturing was approached by someone to make a screen for the hospital system, a customized screen to protect doctors and nurses against COVID on the wards. And that project didn't work out because of a various set of reasons, because the middle person in that was not the most honorable person. But Dirk got very excited about looking at screens for all different kinds of uses. And he had this specialized material for the screens that were fire retardant and things like that. And then when we were working with Dirk, we looked at different market segments, and one of the biggest ones was restaurants. So when you guys came along, it was really just serendipity that you had the capabilities to go out to restaurants and use that kind of product. And over time, we saw huge numbers of restaurants ended up building various structures. It was quite amazing. And just very hard though to get traction in that market. But the ones you did quite well. Just very hard. For you, it was a very different kind of market approach than what you were used to. And I remember pushing and saying, "Don't worry about failure. Failure is part of the job. If you're 1 in 10, you're doing well. If you're 3 in 10, you're a superstar." And that took a lot of adjustment for you guys, but just part of the way it is. Very different take on what you have to do. But I think you guys really pivoted quite well and really took in, as fast as I could coach them, they were moving on ahead of me and trying to do things. And that was pretty exciting.
Great. Now, Lauren, when we kind of came in and introduced a couple of process changes to you, have you been looking at and now as you're going back to doing things that you did before, have you been looking at your process and then making any changes based on this experience?
Oh, absolutely. And I would say that this process is sort of what made, I would say before we went this process, between the two of us, I was the only one who was like looking at the business and like working on the business consistently, and even that not very consistently. And now, having gone through this process, Joe now does the same thing. He's like, "Oh, well, if we're doing this, we should do X, Y, and Z because of these profit margins." And he actually brought up Joel earlier this week because we've been trying to figure out what the funnel is for the custom construction project, because the ratio for that is we've been booking like 3 or 4 for every 10, which feels pretty good. But it was funny to watch him be like, "Well, it used to be with the restaurants, it was 1 in 100, and this is closer to 3 or 4 per 10. So that's a much better ratio."
Right. That's great.
Good. So, Lauren, is this kind of comment a little bit about the kind of what we brought to you from a business standpoint and how that's going to kind of go forward from here?
Sure. It's certainly, I'm trying to think of how to describe it. It feels like you brought like an outside perspective, and we had never had anybody else who knows much about business outside of my father, who helps me do the accounting. like really actually like talk about the business and like how it works and like the actual like nuts and bolts of it. So having somebody else help examine that was very useful.
Great, because I think now, kind of going forward and just from your perspective, if you could kind of talk to somebody who, in your situation, what kind of advice you would give to them about how to use an outside perspective and how to help them look at their business from the experiences you've had.
Sure. I mean, I would say having somebody else look at the business and give us feedback on the business who isn't necessarily like in the business in the weeds. Some of the advice is hard to hear, and some of it is stressful because it's not how your brain is working. It's not how you develop the business. But being open to that growth and listening to that feedback starts to give you different ways to do things, which can be very, very helpful. Everything we're doing now is significantly more streamlined because Joel kept talking to us about streamlining the process, and we wouldn't have that without the work that y'all did.
Thank you.
I remember one part, Lauren, about when you did your first workup for the cost of this thing, and it was a very high cost. And so we always have this problem where how do you politely say you have to reduce it by 50%? And we did that dance and went through that, but I could hear the audible gulps at the end of the telephone. But you guys really did a good job figuring out how to buy better, how to produce better, and you got the numbers down. And I think that those are the kind of things that unless you kind of push, you can't get there. And I don't know how that helps the rest of what you do in the production business, but I'm hoping that it gives you more a greater sense of kinds of options when you're looking at how you approach a new project.
It certainly does, and it's funny. We're building Shakespeare in Clark Park this summer, which is a little over budget, and I feel like we're looking at it from a different perspective because of those kind of conversations that we had. Like, oh, maybe we could use a material that already exists, just modified slightly, as opposed to completely building it from scratch. Like, those are things we never thought about before.
Great. Lauren, what would you, if someone came to you, and say, what kind of little nuggets could you suggest to them about, here you are with this small business and you are coming back out of COVID and trying to reestablish what you have done. Any suggestions that you could give to them about how to look at it and maybe some things to use as a springboard from?
That's another good question. I would say if there was something that was working for you during COVID that was helping maintain and like push the business forward, sort of really assessing if you want to fold that into to what you do going forward. I know Joe and I will probably continue to do the custom construction work to help supplement the entertainment work, especially because I think entertainment can take a minute to like fully ramp back up the way it was. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is like whatever was so important to you in your business during COVID that you didn't want to let go, sort of keeping that in mind so that you can make a better plan moving forward as to what you want the post-COVID business model to be.
Great. Yeah.
A question related to that about, I asked this of a lot of people in business about, your own levels of self-confidence that, I don't know if I were in business and my business closed down in 5 days, I don't know what I would do. Frankly, in terms of that's about as scary a thing as I could imagine a business owner facing. And, yet, you got the PPP money and you worked through that and did that very well. And then you started working on the product innovations. So I'm just wondering sort of, what kind of the long-term effects you have when you think about running the business from, your own and Joe's kind of self-confidence.
I mean, I would say, I think we're more confident now than we were before, and sort of, I mean, we'll see if this ends up being an asset or if it bites us in the butt a little bit. there's definitely an attitude to the both of us. Be like, well, we figured this out. So we can probably figure out literally anything else that might come at us. And also just, keeping in mind, we figured it out. And that does say something about our level of dedication to it as well.
Yep.
It really does. And I think, to you guys are to be complimented for literally having been thrown a lead sinker and managed to still swim with that thing tied around your feet, because it is one of those things that Joel said, that that's the worst nightmare for a business owner, to have your business just totally disappear in 1 week's time and figure out how to survive, and actually then how to figure out how to turn it around and come back at it again and kind of keep going. And now where you're at, where you have a chance of, returning to the days before COVID and hopefully have a better, more profitable business after it's all said and done. So kudos to you, Lauren, for doing that. Right? You're right. You could do that. And thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come in and work with your organization and to be that.
It was very funny. The PNC bank rep we have reached out. They were, "Can you prove this?" And I was like, "Oh, most assuredly. Don't you worry. Here's all the paperwork." So we got both, no problem. And then we also got a grant from the city to help keep us in business, which was great. It was super useful.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Lauren, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it, and give our regards to Joe and tell him we hope he is doing better. And I gotta say, we'll be back to you probably somewhere along the line for a follow-up, but meanwhile, take good care.
Well, actually, I want to have one more question about your rent. Are you still in the same place? So you survived that, worked it out with the landlord ultimately?
We did. We worked it out with the landlord. He gave us a break on the rent, which is going through at least this year, if not also into next year, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay.
Excellent. All right.
I want to come over and visit you guys and meet you. I met you in the neighborhood for a brief period of time when you were walking your dog, and I definitely would like to meet Joe. That never happened in person, unfortunately. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you should come on by and check things out.
All right, that's great.
Thanks, Lauren. Take care.
All right, bye.